Thank you so much for joining us. As you know, my name is Chris McGowan. I serve as the president of the Siouxland Chamber of Commerce. Delighted to have you with us this evening for our 39th annual Siouxland Chamber of Commerce dinner. I could not be more pleased with this year's keynote. As we say every single year, we look for a speaker who is timely, topical, and compelling. I don't know if we've ever hit the bullseye better than in 2025 to meet those three important criteria. General Paul M. Nakasone is certainly timely, topical, and compelling. The remarks that he will make this evening before all of us are important to everyone who is invested in, and that should be all of us, better understanding cyber technology, information warfare, all the things that matter most to national security. So with no further ado, I want to introduce our keynote, and to our keynote, this is Siouxland's local print, television, and radio journalism core, and we're grateful for your presence. Welcome, General Paul Nakasone.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's wonderful to be here in Sioux City in the tri-state area. I'm Paul M. Nakasone. I'm a retired Army general who spent 37 years on active duty, the last 6 years leading the National Security Agency and U.S. Cyber Command. I'm also a fellow Midwesterner. I'm a native of White Bear Lake, Minnesota, so it's really nice to be back in the heartland. Hey, tonight I'm thrilled to be here for the 39th annual Chamber of Commerce dinner here for Siouxland. What I'm going to talk about is digital transformation. What does it mean in terms of our nation as we take a look at the technologies, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity, and what's the impact that they're going to have on our nation going forward? Really, really pleased, and I'm more than happy to take any questions that you may have of me.
What do you hope everyone leaves with tonight after your speech?
Well, I hope that people leave here with the understanding really of three things. First of all, that there is a tremendously different world that we live in today. You know, the world in which I grew up during the Cold War and the world in which I experienced after the attacks of 9/11 really is a world of strategic competition. So I'm going to touch on that tonight, really the strategic competition between the United States and China. Secondly, I'm going to talk about technology. I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. This is our great opportunity for the future, but it also provides a certain amount of challenges. And the final thing I'm going to talk about talent. I'm going to talk about really what is the advantage of chambers of commerce and communities. It's being able to develop talent for the future. Really, really hard for me to ever imagine a little kid growing up in, a suburb of St. Paul, Minnesota, that one day I would be a four-star general briefing presidents, leading two major organizations. And that really came from a community that was very, very understanding and was very, very helpful.
Jared McNett, Sioux City Journal. During your time leading both of those organizations, what would you say were the biggest challenges that you faced and had to reckon with?
Well, I think the challenge that I would really kind of look back to is March of 2020, COVID-19. Now, I don't ever remember in my 3 decades of training someone saying, hey, Paul, this is what you do during a global pandemic, but yet we found ourselves in the middle of a global pandemic in March of 2020. And so, I just share with you being able to kind of take a step back and say, hey, we have to protect ourselves. This is what we have to do to move our way forward. That was perhaps one of the things that, really stands on our mind. But I think the second thing was really just this idea of continuing to attract top talent. I had the opportunity today to stop at Sterling Corporation. My message to them was, at the end of the day, you have fantastic technology and you have fantastic tradecraft, but what makes you different is your talent. And so that's really what I focused on, is being able to continue to bring young people and those that were interested in serving our nation to places like U.S. Cyber Command and the National Security Agency.
From your standpoint, with TikTok now, the negotiations have gone back and forth between China and the company in the U.S. Is TikTok as big a threat through China as people keep saying in the federal government, or is that I don't know if smoke screen's the right word, but there's probably bigger security issues with China than TikTok.
I think that I would share with you when I think about the impact of social media, particularly social media that's controlled by another country. We need to take a step back and really understand that 170 million people in the United States are using this app. 1/6 of the United States is using it as their sole source of information. So if we're comfortable with an app where that information from your cell phone is stored in a foreign country, an app where a foreign nation can understand where you are at any time of day, and an app that's able to provide information and news stories that might be, favorable to that country and not to our own, I think we have to think very seriously about it. This is really the world in which we live today.
Do you still serve on the board of directors for OpenAI?
I do serve on the board of directors for OpenAI.
Looking forward, what are some of your biggest concerns with artificial intelligence? Because obviously there's been a lot that people have raised in all kinds of different sectors.
Yeah, I think as we look at OpenAI going forward and looking at all large language models in the companies, the speed of change is driving a number of different changes rapidly. I think of the great opportunities within education and within healthcare, but I also know that these are platforms that we need to have the safety and the security built into them, and that's one of the things that I have done over the past year being on that board to make sure that as we release these models, as we take a look at the people that are utilizing them, there is an ability for us to say this is a secure and safe model.
Joanne Fox with Siouxland Catholic Radio, and there's no doubt that there is benefits for education, healthcare, business. What might be the benefits for religion and faith-based communities?
Well, I think as I just looked at the discussions this summer with the new pope, as he gathered a whole flock of young people and being able to message them, he was utilizing social media. He was utilizing artificial intelligence. He was being able to utilize a medium which I think touches a lot of people. So as we think about religion, as we think about how we're going to be able to serve a message, this is probably one of the areas that is an area that can be very, very advantageous for religious organizations.
Are we going to have a whole new slate of legislative laws that needs to be passed? Spotify today, there was news about them and concerns over AI as far as stealing royalties from musicians by literally copying that. People have said that you could take, for instance, a radio broadcast or two of mine, and if you get a clean feed of it, you could take my voice or anybody else's voice and create false newscasts with something sounding like me from AI. I mean, is that the world that's ahead of us and having to deal with those?
So I think any time that our nation or the world has experienced tremendous technological change, there are always going to be updates in terms of the laws and legislations that are going to be necessary. Think about 2007 and the advent of smartphones, right? Think about our world before 2007. The way that we banked, the way that we shopped, the way that we communicated was completely different. And now, post those days, there's been new legislation, there's been new laws in terms of how we utilize those technologies.
Going off of what he was asking, I think it was last month, you were at a conference in Las Vegas, and one of the things you talked about was sort of this age gap between the people that are tasked with kind of, writing this legislation or, enacting these changes with tech, and then the people in the tech sector themselves. How do you kind of bridge that age gap?
Well, I'm part of that age gap, perhaps. I would share, again, with this idea of message tonight, one of the things I hope to do is to talk about, as we think about operating in the world of today, we need a world in which folks are pretty tech savvy, right? I mean, we no longer can just operate in this world not wondering about, how we might utilize large language models or how do we use our smartphones. This is a necessity. And so one of the things I think I was trying to point out very, very directly in my talks earlier this summer was this idea that, hey, we need to be able to take a look at how we're going to broadly educate a larger portion of our society and how we utilize these platforms.
You mentioned your education on the interview with Joanne Fox and Siouxland Catholic Radio. If you could give advice to someone maybe that's in high school or college pursuing computer science or technology, what advice would it be here in 2025?
My advice would be something along this line. You learn three different ways. First of all, you learn in school. Secondly, you learn on the job. And third, you learn from self-development. We live in a world where self-development today is so much easier than it's ever been before. We have to increasingly think about how we are going to develop ourselves because our schools, our on-the-job, are not keeping up perhaps with the change in technology. But whether or not you go onto YouTube or whether or not you go onto a different platform, there are great opportunities for us to develop ourselves. I think young people today have to take that in mind. They have to be very, very conscious of it. If I might take 1 second to add one other portion of it, there are three things that I think that will always be timeless with regards to education that I would share with young people. First of all, is the importance of critical thinking. You know, I spent a tremendous amount of time in my college career wondering what I was going to major in and minor in and double major and double minor, and I graduated and no one could care what I majored in at all. What they really cared was, could I think critically? The second thing, it is truly about communications. You know, being able to write and speak and even listen is a necessity that we all have. It's always going to be there and we're always going to need it. And the final thing, it's character. Character at the end of the day is what you are in the dark. And so being able to have strong character as a leader, being able to have strong character as a business person is something I think is essential.